Yeah, we are live.
Good morning, everyone. Please confirm if you're able to hear my voice and if the video is clear. Okay. All right, guys. Let's wait for a few seconds before everyone comes in and joins the link. So until then, I'll be sharing my screen. Okay. Let's begin, guys. So we are here in the top gear. This is Imtali Shah. So I'll be taking your first 5 questions of your top gear test. The questions that I've chosen for you, they are quite important for you. So before we start, just give me a second before I can configure this. All right, guys. So the question for the first question that I have taken up, it is the question number 11 of your test, and the question is about the floating exchange rate. So we'll cover this one, a bit of conceptual question. So consider the following statements regarding the floating exchange rates. Fine. So what is a floating exchange rate? You already know exchange rates are of 3 types. You have a floating exchange rate, also known as a market exchange rate. And then you also have a fixed exchange rate system, which is fixed by the central bank of a country. And then you have, again, we call it a managed float. We have a managed float exchange rate. We have some more as well. There is a wide band exchange rate system. There is again a crawling peg exchange rate system. So all of these are the different types of exchange rate in which central bank may fix a particular value for the exchange rate, or it may fix a particular band for exchange rate, and it may also continuously keep on revising the band as and when the situation requires to be done that way. Now in this question, the question is about the floating exchange rate system, and the first statement given here is a rise in the interest rates at home, that is in the domestic country, often leads to an appreciation of the domestic currency. Now you're clearly seeing here, if the rates in the country are increased, the increased rates have a direct impact on the money supply in the economy. Now, if the RBI increases the rates, it will actually bring down the money supply. And when the money supply is less, if you follow an exchange rate system that is a floating exchange rate, that will floats on the forces of demand and supply in the economy. Now, with the less money supply, you'll have an exchange rate system in which with less money, the appreciation of the currency will happen. With less money, there is more less domestic money in comparison to foreign money, that is the dollar. So we have a dollar that is our hard currency. In comparison to that, our money supply is continuously decreasing. Why? Because the central bank has chosen to increase the interest rate. With high interest rates, the money supply falls, and with less money supply, there is appreciation of the domestic currency. Fine. With respect to the foreign currency, if our central bank follows a floating exchange rate system with less money supply, there will be an appreciation of rupee, right? Now, in that sense, the statement 1 is completely correct. Now, the statement 2 in here is, if a country country's imports grow faster than its exports, then the domestic currency tends to depreciate. Now I'll have to cover this. Let me clear the screen. Just give me a second. Okay. If a country's imports grow faster than its exports, now you're seeing here, you are actually importing more than what you export. Fine. So whenever you're importing your goods and services from outside, there is a capital outflow that happens. There is a, the dollar goes out from the economy. There is a capital outflow. And whenever you export, there is a capital inflow. We already know that. Now, with more imports, the money, the dollar, the foreign exchange is actually going out of the economy. Fine. That actually means that your foreign currency, the reserves of foreign currency will go down. Why? Because you're importing more than you export. Fine. When the foreign currency goes down, in comparison to the rupees that you have, the domestic currency that we have, the domestic currency remaining the same and the foreign currency going down, it will lead to the depreciation of the rupee. It will lead to depreciation of the domestic currency. Why? Because domestic currency, the money supply of the domestic currency, remaining the same, and in comparison to it, foreign currency going down, foreign exchange reserves going down, because we are importing more than we export. In that particular scenario, we are seeing that the rupee is actually depreciating. The rupee is actually getting weakened over time. Why? Because the imports have increased and exports have decreased. Now, in comparison to imports, when you actually lower your exports, that will clear cut hamper the exchange rate system. If you are floating a floating exchange rate. Now, if you're not following a floating exchange rate system and you're following the fixed exchange rate system, in that particular scenario, there will be no effect on the exchange rate. Why? Because the RBI arbitrarily fixes the exchange rate if it is fixed. Fine. Now, since we are following a floating exchange rate system, in that particular scenario, if the import is high, it will lead to capital outflow. The dollar will go out from the economy, weakening the rupee, and rupee will depreciate. In that scenario, you're seeing that both of the statements are correct. And the answer to this is both 1 and 2. It was relatively, on the easier level, the question. Now, the second question that I have chosen is for you is question number 28. And the question number 28, more of a conceptual question. It has three particular concepts known as LAF. You already know LAF is a liquidity adjustment facility. Liquidity adjustment facility. Then you have MSF. MSF is a marginal standing facility. Marginal standing facility. Then you have MSS, which is market stabilization scheme. Market stabilization scheme. Now, all of these things are actually the quantitative tools of monetary policy. Now, monetary policy has two tools that that are actually the tools of monetary policy. And the first is your quantitative tool of monetary policy, and then is your qualitative tool of monetary policy. Fine. In quantitative tool, we see a certain ratios that we have, whether it be SLR, whether it be CRR, whether it be incremental cash reserve ratio, ICRR. Fine. Then we have, say, for example, different rates that we have. That is the repo rate, the reverse repo rate. We used to have the bank rate. We have marginal standing facility, MSF. In this only we see the liquidity adjustment facility. And then after these rates, we have some, open market operations or market stabilization scheme or standing deposit facility, SDF, through which the RBI uses these tools to increase or decrease the overall money supply in the economy. Now, the difference between the quantitative and qualitative tools of monetary policy is that qualitative tool does not actually regulate the overall money supply in the economy, but it actually regulates the intersectoral fund allocation. Intersectoral fund allocation. Now, the qualitative tool actually looks at particular sectors and regulates the fund in that particular sector. It looks at intersectoral fund allocation. This is a tool used by the RBI to look into these matters. But quantitative tools look at the overall stock of the money supply. Fine. Now, what are these LAF? LAF is a loan facility that the RBI provides to the banks, through which the banks can actually, stabilize their overnight fluctuations in the demand and supply of money. If there is a high demand of money for the banks and banks need some money on overnight basis, on a short-term basis, banks can get the loan from the RBI under LAF facility, liquidity adjustment facility. So if the banks want to adjust their facility in the short run, precisely on the overnight basis, they can get the loan from the RBI, and the RBI charges a repo rate on that particular short-term loan. Now we used to have a repo loan for overnight basis, but recently we started the term repos. Term repos are the loans provided by RBI to the banks for their liquidity adjustment, and it is just for 7, 14, or 28 days. Then recently we also started long-term repo operations. The tenure for these operations are going to be from 1 to 3 years. Now this is something that the RBI comes up, now the repo loan, the liquidity adjustment facility, is the loan given by the RBI, the facility given by the RBI to the banks, by which the banks can actually manage their overnight liquidity management. Fine, liquidity adjustment can be done by the banks through this liquidity adjustment facility, and it's facility used by the RBI to provide loans, and the interest charge on that is repo rate. Now LAF is your first concept in here. Then you have MSF. Whenever you take a loan from the RBI, you generally have to give the collateral. Fine, you have to pay. You have to give the collateral to the RBI. जिस पर आपका RBI जो है आपको लोन प्रोवाइड करता है. Now the RBI, whenever it provides loan under LAF or some other instrument to the banks have to give some collateral. Banks have to give some collateral. Now the collateral given by the banks is generally government securities. Now असल में जो RBI आपको ये लोन प्रोवाइड करता है, जो ये बैंक्स को लोन प्रोवाइड करता है, this loan is given at a repo rate. This is not actually a rate of interest. This is actually a rate of discount. This is actually a rate of discount. It is also known as the discount rate. Generally, in United States, we call the repo rate as a discount rate. Why? Because the government securities given as collateral to the RBI are taken by the RBI on a discount. Fine. So that the discount amount in here is the repo rate. That is the discount rate. Fine. It is not generally a rate of interest. It is a discount rate on the government securities given by the banks as a collateral to the RBI. Now, the banks that are giving this collateral to the RBI, giving the government securities to the RBI, these government securities have to be over and above the SLR, over and above the SLR requirement. But currently there is an 18.5% of SLR requirement that the banks have to keep of their entire NDTL, net demand and time liability, apart from CRR that is currently 3%. Now the CRR of 3% and an SLR of 18.5%, this SLR has to be kept in government securities only. Fine. Now we already know that it has three options. It can be put in cash, gold, and government securities, but it is almost entirely put in government securities because the banks earn interest on it, and it is the instrument through which the RBI or the government forces the banks to lend to the government. Now this is the way it was also asked in UPSC, that which is the instrument that government uses to force the banks to lend to it. Now that is actually the SLR. So SLR is the instrument that the entire 18.5% have to be kept as government securities, in the SLR. Now this collateral given by the banks to the RBI as a collateral to get the repo loan, this collateral of government securities has to be over and above the SLR requirement of 18.5%. Now, if you have government securities, say for example that are over and above SLR, those government securities can be given to the RBI and the repo loan can be taken. LAF, liquidity adjustment facility, can be used as as a facility to manage your liquidity, short-term liquidity fluctuations. You can manage your liquidity fluctuations by giving collateral your government securities. But if the bank has already exhausted all the government securities it had over and above SLR, now, in such a scenario, if the bank needs to get a loan from the RBI to manage its short-term fluctuation in liquidity, in that sense, RBI has given another tool to these banks, and that is MSF, marginal standing facility, in which the banks can now give collateral the government securities which are of the SLR quota. Now, the government can pledge the government securities of the SLR quota if they are willing to pay a higher rate of interest. Generally, MSF is more than your repo rate. So, आपकी repo rate अगर इस वक्त 4% की है, your MSF is 4.65%. In such a scenario, your MSF is you have to pay a higher rate of interest on the MSF if you are pledging the SLR quota government securities to take the short-term loan. Now, this is MSF, short-term credit control measure to absorb the excess liquidity. Here is LAF. Then the third is MSS. MSS क्या है आपका? Market stabilization scheme. Market stabilization scheme. A market stabilization scheme क्या है? It simply means when the economy में money supply काफी ज़्यादा है, तो RBI क्या करता है? आपका RBI open market operation कर सकता है. When RBI can sell and purchase the government securities sell and purchase the government securities, to actually control the money supply. If RBI sells the government securities, it actually takes the money out from the market and decreases the money supply. If RBI purchases the government securities, it increases the money supply. Now, these are some open market operations that the government does. But under MSS, what we can do, we generally, we do the sale of government securities. We do the sale of government securities, and in such a scenario, we only decrease the money supply. So MSS ke andar market stabilization scheme mein, you want to decrease the money supply because you want to stabilize the prices in the market, stabilize the inflation. In such a scenario, you just sell the government securities and take the money out. And such a method is used to stabilize the market under market stabilization scheme. Now, these are the three concepts of LAF. Now, let us get to the question in here. The question is, just give me a second. Here. Now, LAF is a short-term, what is LAF? Short-term loan jab hum lete hain, just to absorb the excess liquidity under repo. So, aap kya karte hain? LAF is your, a short-term credit control measure to absorb the excess liquidity. Now, here you are clearly seeing you want to absorb the excess liquidity, and you have a process of LAF in which you can give on the loans on repo or reverse repo rate. So दोनों इसमें आती है, reverse repo भी आता है और repo भी आता है. In such a scenario, you can actually on the short term basis manage the liquidity. Second है आपका MSF. It's a loan facility by RBI to banks on overnight basis. ये भी आपका MSF market, overnight basis में आप MSF में loan ले सकते हैं, but the MSF rate is higher than the liquidity adjustment rate. Then you have a market stabilization scheme. तो अगर इकोनॉमी में एक्सेस फॉरेन एक्सचेंज आ जाता है, जिसकी वजह से जब डॉलर काफी ज्यादा अंदर आ गया, यू हैव टू कन्वर्ट द डॉलर इनटू रुपीस, और रुपीस का काफी ज्यादा इंजेक्शन हो जाता है मनी सप्लाई में, काफी ज्यादा इंजेक्शन हो जाता है इकोनॉमी में. नाउ टू एक्चुअली टेक दिस मनी आउट फ्रॉम द मार्केट, ये जो फॉरेन एक्सचेंज के बढ़ने की वजह से जो रुपया काफी ज्यादा बढ़ गया है, इस एक्स्ट्रा रुपया को आप लेना चाहते हैं मार्केट से, इसके लिए आप MSF इस्तेमाल करते हैं when you take the money out from the market by selling the government securities. Now, this is to control the liquidity due to excess foreign exchange flow. It was used recently when India got huge amounts of foreign exchange. Foreign exchange काफी ज्यादा अंदर आ रहा था. We had to convert the foreign exchange into rupees. फिर rupees का influx हो रहा था economy में. Then to take this excess money supply, I already told you, excess money supply economy में था, you need to decrease the money supply, and for decreasing the money supply, you had to sell the government securities. So RBI under MSS sells the government securities to take the money supply out. So the option here is 1B, 2A, and 3C. This is they have connected it clearly. Now, the third question in here that I have chosen for you is question number 29. This is a ways and means and advances. Consider the following statements about it. Now, what are ways, means, and advances? Now, this is WMA is a tool through which there are short-term fluctuations. There are extra expenditure that the government, both at central and state level, that the government incurs. So, government expenditure जब आपका ज़्यादा हो जाता है, government expenditure ज़्यादा होने की वजह से the government has to borrow. Fine. If the total revenue of the government is not able to, total earning of the government is not able to meet the total expenditure, so expenditure ज़्यादा है, revenue कम है. Suppose you have an expenditure of 120 crore and revenue of 100 crore. There is a deficit of 20 crore, and this 20 crore, this has to be borrowed, right? This has to be borrowed. Now, whenever we borrow, according to this new tool, ways and means advances, WMA, this 20 crore has to be borrowed from the RBI as you take the loan from the RBI. So इसमें हम क्या करते हैं? RBI is actually told to provide loan to both government, central government and state government. This is known as the general government of country. Both the central and the state government, they both can take the loan from the RBI, and under ways and means advances, जो का 20 करोड़ का डेफिसिट हुआ है, you can take the loan from the RBI. इसमें सबसे पहले states के लिए, states have more power under WMA, जहां पर state आपका सबसे पहले SDF ले सकता है, standing deposit facility. फिर आपका state जो है WMA के अंदर normal WMA लेता है at a repo rate. उसके बाद आपका they can go for overdraft. Overdraft पे जब rate पड़ती है, that is 2% more than the repo rate. 2% more than the repo rate. Fine. Now ये overdraft हो गया, ये आपका ways and means and advances हो गया, ये SDF हो गया. इसमें states और center दोनों loan ले सकते हैं RBI से. So RBI is actually told to give loans to the state and central governments if there is a requirement of such. Now, ways and means advances, both the center and state are allowed to borrow under ways and means advances from the RBI. Perfectly correct. RBI charges repo rate. while extending loan to government under ways and means advances. अभी मैंने कहा ways and means advances में repo rate होती है, overdraft facility में 2% plus repo rate होता है, and it is mandatory that the government shall not borrow from RBI except ways and means advances route to meet temporary shortfall in cash. If there is a shortfall in cash and the government needs money, they cannot borrow from RBI except through the route of ways and means advances. They have to go through this route only, both the center as well as the state government. So the correct answer here is 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. After this, which of the following is correct about Niti Aayog? Typically easier question here. Niti Aayog के relation में आपको बताना है which of the following is correct. Now, it does not have power to allocate funds. Yes, it does not have power to allocate funds. Why? Because that is vested with the finance ministry. वो आपका allocation करता है funds का. Niti Aayog is only a think tank. It is only a think tank. Niti Aayog is only a think tank. Okay. Now, when the Planning Commission started with planning in 1951, it continued till 12th five-year plan. जब आपका खत्म हुआ 2017 में. So Niti Aayog was formed in 2015 in here. जब आपका Niti Aayog शुरू हो गया और Planning Commission, हमने बंद कर दिया. Then Niti Aayog came in 2015 and it came up with a 15-year agenda till 2030. Under this 15-year agenda, there was a 7-year strategy, and under this 7-year strategy, there was a 3-year strategy. Now, आपका जो Niti Aayog है, it came up with short-term, targets 3 साल के under the broad framework of 7 years, which were under the perspective planning of 15 years. Fine. Now, this was actually the system that the Niti Aayog came up with. It's a 3-year action agenda that has replaced the 5-year plans of erstwhile Planning Commission. Perfectly right. Both of the statements, both of the statements are correct. Then we have, it focuses on imperative planning based on decentralization principle. Now we already know Niti Aayog, there was an increasing demand. जब आपका नेशनल डेवलपमेंट काउंसिल बना था 52 में, उसमें हमने स्टेट्स की पार्टिसिपेशन बढ़ाने की बात की थी. Then फिर भी हमने देखा the states are not getting participation. Why? Because the central government had the Congress government had a majority there. And जहाँ जिस स्टेट में कांग्रेस की गवर्नमेंट हुआ करती थी, वही लोग एनडीसी में आके मीटिंग्स करते थे. So the non-Congress governments were not actually listened to in NDC. So हमने देखा there was a centralizing tendency in our planning, and which is actually known as the imperative planning. Imperative planning में there is a centralized tendency. Imperative planning के अंदर, imperative planning में you just fix the planning at the central level. That is a national level planning. You don't get to the grassroots level, to the panchayats, to the municipal corporations. वहां तक आप नहीं जाते हैं. Block level तक आप बस national level पे plan करते हैं and you fix the targets. Fine, that is imperative planning. But now after 8th five-year plan, just after LPG reforms, India shifted to indicative planning. When you just provide the indication, you just provide the overall framework of the planning. उसके बाद आपका grassroots level पे जो local bodies है, वही आपकी planning को implement करेंगी. धीरे-धीरे हम decentralized planning की तरफ जा रहे हैं. Why? Because in here we have actually started the concept of cooperative federalism, the concept of competitive federalism. All these concepts are now getting under Niti Aayog. Now it focuses on it does not focus on imperative planning. It actually focuses on indicative planning, which is based on decentralization principle. So the third statement is not right in here. The option will be 1 and 2 only. Okay, 1 and 2. Now. This is a very good question in here. Basal 2 guidelines. Now we already know Basal Accord जो बनाया गया था. Basal Accord. What is the Basal Accord? Basal Accord is simply your 3 Basal norms: Basal 1, Basal 2, and Basal 3. Now Basal 1 जब ये आया था initially ये क्या था? Bank for International Settlement हमने बनाया, and it is the central bank of the central banks. दुनिया के 60 बड़े-बड़े central bank आकर उन्होंने मिलकर एक Bank for International Settlement बनाया, because we know that RBI, the Central Bank of India, likewise the Central Bank of Pakistan, the Central Bank of US, they generally control the monetary system in that particular country. But we need to have, in a globalized world, in a connected world, more connected world, we need to have a central bank that looks at the economy of the world as well. Fine. So for that only, we just made an institution, a Bank for International Settlement, that is the central bank of the central banks, which 60 central banks together came up, and started the formation of this. Now, Bank for International Settlement came up with Basel Accord, in which they gave some norms, जिसमें उन्होंने कहा कि बैंक की पूरी दुनिया में बैंकिंग सेक्टर को किस तरीके से काम करने की जरूरत है. Now they came up with Basel 1, Basel 2, and Basel 3. Basel 2 was actually which created the concept of covering all the risks, Basel 1 में सिर्फ उन्होंने क्रेडिट रिस्क को कैलकुलेट किया था, उसमें अकाउंट किया था। यहाँ पर इन्होंने तीनों रिस्क को अकाउंट किया, क्रेडिट रिस्क को, मार्केट रिस्क को एंड ऑपरेशनल रिस्क को। फिर बेसल 3 में they came up with capital adequacy ratio or capital to risk weighted assets, and then they came up with counter cyclical capital buffer. ये इन्होंने 8% का रखा था, ये इन्होंने 2.5% का रखा। फाइन, now this was some targets की आपकी कितनी capital requirement होनी चाहिए, that was started in Basel 2, but it was given higher values in Basel 3. अब ये risks का क्या मतलब है? Whenever the banks give some loans, तो बैंक का जो भी लोन बाहर जाएगा उसका अकॉर्डिंगली एक रिस्क होता है। फाइन, तो अगर सपोज आप होम लोन्स देते हैं, इट हैज अ पर्टिकुलर रिस्क अटैच्ड टू इट। आप एजुकेशन लोन देते हैं, इट हैज अ पर्टिकुलर रिस्क अटैच्ड टू इट। आप प्रायोरिटी सेक्टर लेंडिंग में एग्रीकल्चरल लोन्स देते हैं, इट हैज अ रिस्क अटैच्ड टू इट। सो एवरी लोन हैज अ रिस्क अटैच्ड टू इट, so that is known as a credit risk, that is known as a credit risk. Credit risk simply means that whenever you credit money, the borrower can actually default on that. It may not be able to pay the interest back, it may not be able to pay the principal amount back in full, or not at all as well. Now all these things are considered under credit risk. एक और risk होता है banks का, that is market risk. Whenever the banks have a lot of money, they invest, they not only give money on credit, but they invest in stock market, they invest in real estate. Now these are some market related investment models in which the banks generally invest their money. Now if you invest in a stock market, if you invest in real estate, there can be issues in the market, there can be a market risk attached to it. Stock market crash हो गया, जो stocks खरीदे थे वो कंपनी के stock prices गिर गए, तो आपका भी उसमें नुकसान हो जाता है। तो बैंक्स का एक मार्केट रिस्क भी होता है। Why? Because they have invested money in the market. Then there are some operational risks as well. आपके बैंक का operational risk होता है. Suppose this is a time when a lot of cyber security issues are getting into the banks. There is the problem of maybe a fire may break out in the bank. बैंक का ब्रांच आपका खत्म हो सकता है, उसकी वजह से साइबर सिक्योरिटी, साइबर फ्रॉड हो सकता है, जिसकी वजह से बैंक का एक ऑपरेशनल रिस्क भी होता है। नाउ जब बेसल 1 आया था, बेसल 1 के अंदर जो बैंकिंग सेक्टर में उन्होंने ये नॉर्म्स डेवलप किए, गाइडलाइंस डेवलप किए, बेसल 1 only covered the credit risk, it only covered the credit risk. बेसल 2 के बाद ही उन्होंने तीनों रिस्क को कवर करना शुरू किया। So Basel 2 is the one which actually covered credit risk, market risk and operational risk. So the answer will be 1, 2 and 3. Then we have a question about CPI. Now you already know, this is a measurement of inflation, the question on measurement of inflation, and we inflation measure at different levels. Say the wholesale price index, then we have the consumer price index. The wholesale price index is measured at the wholesale level. Herein we have also the wholesale food price index. Then CPI is measured at different levels. Initially the CPI was measured at CPI, industrial workers, CPI agricultural laborers, CPI rural laborers, and CPI urban non-manual employees. Then in 2011-12 we started with CPI urban, CPI rural, CPI combined, and CPI combined is your national CPI. It is considered the national CPI, which is used by RBI for inflation targeting. And then we in 2014 came up with CFPI, consumer food price index, urban, rural and combined for a particular food. Fine. Now the consumer price index जो initially हमने शुरू किया था IW and AL and RL, इसमें जो आपका IW industrial worker, AL and RL है, it is calculated by Ministry of Labor के अंदर labor bureau आता है, that actually calculates the industrial worker. Fine. Then you have urban non-manual employees. This CPI was calculated by the CSO, which was now merged with NSSO to make a National Statistical Office. Now CSO ही आपका calculation करता था UNME का, और यहाँ से आपका ये calculation होता था by the labor bureau. Then we have ये जो industrial worker का CPI है, the CPI industrial worker, it is used by the government of India to actually measure the dearness allowances, that it has to give to its employees. So dearness allowances देने के लिए जो employees, government employees को दी जाती है, dearness allowances, for the calculation of dearness allowances, we use the CPI IW. Why? Because this is the consumer price index at the retail level. What has been the index? How much the prices have increased, compared to last year? How much has the price increase happened? Accordingly, you'll have to increase the dearness allowances. Fine. Then in this WPI, we see that WPI के अंदर we only include the goods. If you see, there are three major groups: the primary articles, the manufactured goods, and miscellaneous. अब यहाँ पर आप देखते हैं WPI के अंदर only goods are covered. In the WPI basket, there are only 697 commodities, and 697 commodities are actually, all of these commodities are goods. The services are not calculated in WPI, but in CPI, both goods and services are calculated. Now, suppose the housing, suppose the education, or the other important services are calculated in CPI basket. Now, let's look at the question in here. What is the question? So CPI urban non-manual employees, IW rural workforce are combined by Labor Bureau under Ministry of Ministry of Labor. This is a wrong statement. Why? Because I told you urban non-manual employees calculated by CSO. Now, second statement is CPI is used by the government of India to grant dearness allowances. Definitely, it is used by government of India to grant dearness allowances. CPI AL and RL, that is agricultural laborer or rural laborer. This is the CPI used for calculating the minimum wages of the workers. Minimum wages of the workers. Now, it is an extra point in here. Unlike WPI, it does not include services. CPI does include services. It's a wrong statement. CPI में in services included होती है, WPI में नहीं होती है. Now, this is a wrong statement in here. The only option correct is 2 only, and here is your correct option. Then we have another question, that is a V-shaped recovery. Now, recently, Economic Survey was of the opinion that because of the COVID, the recession that we have faced, we will actually be able to increase our growth in a V-shaped recovery curve. Now, they gave the idea like this, that suppose this is our growth in here, and we have got into negative growth, -24, and then we are currently recovering now, and this will be the V-shaped recovery. This is our economic growth. Now, इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ आपकी पॉजिटिव में थी जब आपने शुरू किया था यहाँ से, लेकिन रिसेशन हुआ डिमोनेटाइजेशन के बाद ही, you went into slowdown, फिर कोविड की वजह से went into negative, and now we are recovering. And according to them, in the next 3 to 5 years, India can become the fastest growing economy in the world again. But they were also of the opinion that if the second wave of COVID comes, the positive growth rate that we have achieved will go back to the negative, because we'll have to start the lockdown again, and then we might have a W-shaped recovery curve. Now, there were different types of recovery curve given in the economic survey. Now, this is the recovery curve, the W-shaped recovery curve in the face of the second wave of COVID. Now, if the second wave of COVID might not have happened, we would have seen a V-shaped recovery curve. Now, what is the question about it? Which of the following is best describes V-shaped recovery curve? Economy after falling struggles around a low growth rate for some time before rising gradually. Now, that is not a V-shaped recovery curve. That is a U-shaped recovery curve, and this is not what we have seen. What we actually plan for India. Economy quickly recoups lost ground and gets back to the normal growth trend. Now, this is the V-shaped recovery curve. Economy fails to regain the level of GDP even after years go by. Now, that will not be a V-shaped recovery curve. That will be like this. And then we have growth falls and rises, but falls again before recovering. Now, growth falls and rises, but falls or rise, then it goes back again. Now, this is not a V-shaped recovery curve. It might be a W-shaped recovery curve. Now, the only thing statement correct in here is 2 only. Fine. So that will be your option. Now, another question is, consider the following statements regarding the gross domestic product. Is GDP and NDP के बारे में कुछ questions है. Now, the gross domestic product is your total money value of all final goods and services produced in a domestic territory by the normal residents of the country in a financial year. Now, GDP जो है आपका, GDP के अंदर we have not deducted the depreciation. हमने इसमें depreciation deduct नहीं की होती है. It is the gross domestic product. Gross domestic product. Fine. तो total production आपकी कितनी हो रही है, उसमें कोई भी चीज आप deduction नहीं करते हो. Whenever you deduct depreciation from the gross value, you'll get the net domestic product. So the first statement, the gross domestic product is always greater than or equal to net domestic product for the same year. Here in the option is, it is not correct. Why? Because it cannot be equal to NDP. GDP can never be equal to NDP. Why it cannot be equal to NDP? Because depreciation can never be zero. You can actually decrease the depreciation to a level where it is comfortable, but you cannot actually have a zero depreciation in an economy. Why? Because there is wear and tear. Whenever you produce a capital good, it wears and tears. There is depreciation in the capital good, and through the modern technology, you can reduce the depreciation in the economy, but you cannot make it at a zero level. सो ग्रॉस डोमेस्टिक प्रोडक्ट में से कुछ ना कुछ तो डिडक्ट करना ही पड़ेगा, तब जाके एनडीपी मिलेगा। अगर कुछ डिडक्शन नहीं होगा, अगर आपका डेप्रिसिएशन जीरो हो गया, in that scenario GDP will be equal to NDP. Fine, GDP will be equal to NDP, but we see that depreciation can never be zero. That is why GDP is always greater than NDP. It cannot be equal to NDP. Fine. This is your first statement. That is, that is not correct. Then you have GNP of an economy is always lesser than its GDP. Let me show you this question. GNP is always lesser than its GDP. Now, how do we get GDP? How do we get GNP from GDP? आप क्या करते हैं, ग्रॉस डोमेस्टिक प्रोडक्ट में प्लस करते हैं नेट फैक्टर इनकम फ्रॉम अब्रॉड, नेट फैक्टर इनकम फ्रॉम अब्रॉड। इसमें कौन कौन सी चीजें हैं? इसमें तीन चीजें आती है, द रेमिटेंसेस दैट यू हैव, द रेमिटेंसेस, द इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट्स, एंड द लोन्स, द ग्रांट्स, द एक्सटर्नल ग्रांट्स। These are the things. अब remittances, interest payments and grants, अगर इसका टोटल कंबाइंड इफेक्ट पॉजिटिव होगा, तब आपका जीएनपी ज्यादा हो सकता है। अगर इसका टोटल कंबाइंड इफेक्ट नेगेटिव होगा, एज इज द केस विद इंडिया, तो आपका जीएनपी कम हो जाएगा। फाइन, जीएनपी कम होगा। So it can be higher than GDP, it can be lower than GDP, depends on the net factor income from abroad. इंडिया में remittances हमेशा बहुत ज्यादा आती है, that is positive, हमारा remittances वाला positive है काफी। इंडिया बहुत ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट करता है, that therefore it becomes negative for us. And India अब ज्यादा grants बाहर देता है, instead of taking grants from the other countries, India gives grants, a lot of grants are given by India, that is now negative for India. The combined effect of all these three gives us the net minus NFI, fine, because of which आपका GNP becomes less than GDP. India का GNP is less than GDP, fine, because we have a negative net factor income from abroad. Now this is the GNP of an economy is always lesser than its GDP for the same year. It cannot be always lesser, it can change, it can be positive, it can be negative, it can be greater than GDP, it can be less than GDP. Now both of the statements are incorrect. Okay guys, it's over to Shashank now.
Thank you, Tali, and it was a wonderful discussion.
Thank you so much.
I would request someone to just confirm if my slide is clear and my voice is clear. Can someone mention in comment, yes? Oh, thank you. So first question is, consider the following statements about crowding out and crowding in economics. First statement is, if the economy is at full capacity, an increase in government borrowing can lead to a crowding out private investment. First of all, you should know what is crowding out and what is crowding in. Consider we have a bowl. Okay? Don't go to the shape, just understand the concept. We have a bowl, and in this bowl we are having, say, 1,000 rupees. So these 1,000 rupees represent the total amount which is available for providing loan in economy. And out of these 1,000 rupees, government is also having loan and private sector is also having loan. Okay. Consider a situation which is happening before this first statement comes in. In earlier situation, government was having, say, 30% of this amount as loan, and remaining 70% was available for private sector. Now apply this statement, an increase in government borrowing. Now government has increased borrowing. Consider it has increased from 30 to say 60%. If it is increased to 60%, the total available amount to be provided as loan to private sector will be reduced to 40%. Now tell me, if the total amount which is available at the level of banks is lesser, then what would happen? Lending rate will increase. If lending rate means the rate at which these private sector are getting loan is increased, so what is going to happen? It will make taking loan tougher for private sector. For example, earlier when 70% of this amount was available for private sector, interest rate were at say 7%. Since now amount is less, available amount is less, and the people invest, the private sector, which is there to take this loan, they are in large numbers. Now interest rate will increase. So interest rate is say 10%. So what would happen? This will make tougher for private sector to take such loan. This is known as crowding out effect. Means the share which was available for private sector has been crowded out because this space has been taken by government, because government share has been increased from 30 to 60%. Okay. So first statement is correct, because if the economy is at full capacity, an increase in government borrowing can lead to crowding out private investment. So this is what is happening in this example, because if government borrowing has increased, then crowding out of private investment happened, right? Now comes crowding in. If economy is below capacity, so you should also know what does it mean, economy working at full capacity, economy working below capacity. When we say below capacity, it means the total available assets which are used to generate production are there, but they are not working optimally. And why they're not working optimally? It means the scope of increase in demand in that setup, right? In such conditions, government increases spending. Consider this example that government has infused a capital of 15,000 crore for developing highways. If government is spending 15,000 crore additional, means increase government spending. So what is going to happen? It is going to work as a positive sentiment spiral in the economy. Why I'm saying that? Agar highway banega, so what is going to be used? Cement is going to be used, steel is going to be used, and many other things are going to be used. So demand is going to be increased in these sectors. Cement may be demand badhegi, aapka steel sector may be demand badhegi, and people who are working there, ab unke paas job opportunities bhi zyada ho, hai ki nahi? So aise mein, when government is pumping more money, spending more money, now it will lead to crowding in of fixed investment. Now more investors will be coming into economy, right? So it means both the statements are correct. Second is match the following in list 1 with the relevance in list 2. First is Lawrence curve. So we talk about Lawrence curve when we talk about the concept of relative poverty, right? So this is the Lawrence curve. So it is establishing relationship between income in percentage with household. Just understand the utility of Lawrence curve. Okay, this is what you need to know. Although this particular question is quite simple because this is asking just relationship between the two. UPSC can also play along the application of Lawrence curve. Okay. So first understand what this Lawrence curve says. If 10% income, we are talking about the total income which is available in a particular economy. If 10% of that income is available with 10% of households, this is the ideal case, right? Line of perfect equality. 20% income available with 20% people, 40% income available with 40% people, 50% income available with 50% people. What does it mean? It means the whole income is equally distributed. क्या कभी ऐसा आपने देखा है कि सब कुछ सब में बराबर बटा हो? नहीं ना. That is why we say this is line of perfect equality. Now what is reality? This reality is shown by this curved line. This line is showing that 10% of the total income is with around 20% population. Okay. So what does it mean? 10%. just 10% of income is with 20% population. And this line is going on and showing that, for example, 20% income is available with 40% people, means just 20% income. And this income is distributed among how much share of population, households? 40%. So don't you think this is clearly showing inequality, economic inequality in economy? This is what Lawrence curve talk about. Okay. Now, I'm asking another question from you so that I can check you have understood the concept clearly or not. Let's make a line over here. Okay. And this line is C. So this line is A, perfect wala. This line is B, and this line is C. If I ask which of the two economies, means economy B or economy C, which of these two economies are poorer or has more economic inequality, yani कि large economic inequality? So your answer would be B or C. Tell me in your comments. B or C? B or C? Yes, C is poorer, right? Because 10%, look, 10% of income, just 10% of income is with 40% population, right? So this Lawrence curve is showing relationship between percentage of income and percentage of household, thereby showing economy inequality or relative poverty, right? Second is Laffer's curve. So first of all, why this concept of Laffer's curve? Why this relation was established? So the economist, Mr. Arthur Laffer, wanted to tell governments that you can increase tax rate up to a particular limit where you are going to get maximum tax revenue. If you increase tax rate beyond this point, then your tax revenue will start falling. For example, this is 10, this is 20, 30, 40, 10, 20, 30. Have this thing in mind, okay? So when 10% tax rate was there, at that time revenue was this. This is the revenue, consider 10,000 crore, 10K crore, 20K crore, okay, and so on. So if 10% tax is levied, you are having, say, 10K revenue, 10K CR revenue, okay? When this is 30, so you are having this much amount. Consider that it is 40. At 40%, you are having, say, 1 lakh crore. If you increase beyond this point, okay, you increase tax rate further because tax rate is increasing in that side, right? If you increase it to, say, 60%, what is going to happen? Do you think tax revenue with government are going to increase? No, they're not going to increase. Why? Because companies who are established here and were giving you a large chunk of your tax revenue are going to shift their base. Because no one wants to work in an economy where exorbitant tax rates are in place, right? हर कोई बचना चाहता है ना maximum tax rates से. Reasonable tax rates are best, right? So this Laffer's curve is used by government to understand what is reasonable tax rate for their policy, right? So tax revenue and tax rate. Or you all know, if you increase tax rate beyond a point, consider tax rates are, say, 70%. What is going to happen? Tax evasions are going to increase. वैसे ही टैक्स की चोरी होती है इतनी ज्यादा, आपने और ज्यादा बढ़ाया, तो people will be more motivated, right? Now, Phillips curve. So this Phillips curve was very popular in 1960s when it comes to the domain of economics, and this theory was challenged in 1970s. I'm going to tell about the whole story so that you can apply in your question. So Phillips curve talks about relationship between inflation rate and unemployment, right? So this relationship was established by a basic premise, okay? Basic assumption, and that was when there is economic growth in economy, it leads to increase in inflation. Okay, at least slight increase in inflation is always there when there's economic growth, because when there is production, when there's employment, people have more money in hand. If people have more money in their hand, people are going to purchase more, people are going to create more demand. And when people create more demand, what does it mean? If supply side is same and demand is more, inflation is going to happen. Okay, so inflation is not a bad word if inflation is within the limits, right? Now, point is, this Phillips curve told on this premise that if inflation is less, consider that inflation is here. Check how much unemployment is there. Means if inflation is less, unemployment is more. This curve establishes inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. Okay, because if inflation is increasing, Phillips curve says if inflation is increasing, if inflation is increasing, it also means that there's a spur in economic growth. If there's spur in economic growth, sorry for the interruption. Right. If there's spur in economic growth, means more production is there. What is going to happen? More people are going to be employed. If more people are going to be employed, what does it mean? It means unemployment is going to decrease, right? So that is why if inflation is increasing, then unemployment is less. Rate of unemployment is less, okay? Just tell me if you have got these three curves. If you have understood these three curves, just mention confirm in your comments. Just mention confirm. Confirm. Okay, great. Thanks for letting me know. None of you asked, sir, what was the challenge to this Phillips curve? I told you na, ki in 1970s, this relationship which was established in Phillips curve, that rate of inflation and rate of unemployment are having inverse relationship. This conception was challenged in 1970s. Can anyone tell why that was challenged? That was challenged due to stagflation, because in 1970s we saw stagflation in US economy, and at that point economists of that time said in stagflation there's high inflation and high unemployment, so where is that inverse relationship? So that's a special case, okay, because in economy there are various strings which are connected to each other. Okay, so stagflation is a separate case. When stagflation is happening, then this relationship of Phillips curve does not work. UPSC can also play along this line. इस वजह से इस बात को दिमाग में बस paste कर लेना. Okay. Okay, so there's a demand. Yes, sir, can you just expand on Phillips curve? देखिए, Phillips curve is talking about inverse relationship between rate of inflation and unemployment. Okay, so this is based on basic conception that when economic growth is increased, when there is economic growth. So when we are talking about economic growth, can we say that there is increase in production? Yes or no? If there is increase in production, can we say there are people who are getting employed? तभी तो production हो रहा है ना? When people are getting employed, right? If people are getting employed, so what is happening? Unemployment rate is decreasing, right? And I've already told you, when there's economic growth, there is increase in inflation. Okay, so that is why increase in inflation is also regarded as a symbol that people are demanding more. And when people demand more, what does it mean? Production will be high. So you can have the thing in mind that when we talk about Phillips curve, this basic premise is economic growth also helps in increasing inflation. Okay? Right? Yes, Babita, cost push is another segment. Okay, I've already told you that in economics, there are multiple strings connected together, right? So there's slight increase in inflation when there's economic growth, and that is why production will be high, inflation will be high, and unemployment will be less. And I'm not telling that this unemployment will decrease, keep on decreasing in long term. Okay, we are just talking about an effect. If you understood this point, now we are talking about just effect. We are not talking about long-term relation. Then you have understood the whole point. If you got the point now, just mention thumbs up in your comments. Coming to the next question, which among the following is likely to be a cause of inflation? So lowering of policy rates by RBI. Yes, it is a cause of inflation. Why it is a cause of inflation? Let's have an example. If someone is having any trouble with this question, although I think this question is quite direct in nature. Okay. So when policy rates are decreased, okay, consider we are talking about monetary policy rates. Okay, we are talking about repo rate, reverse repo rate, CRR, SLR. Okay. So if these are decreased, inflation can increase. How it can increase? Yes, money supply increase. Consider this example. I'm having some cash in my hand, okay, and I'm a bank. Okay, consider I'm a bank. Okay, and you know RBI is regulator of banking sector, right? Having power through Banking Regulation Act 1949, right? Also RBI Act 1934. Now, point is, you all know out of total deposits, we are talking about one rate, which is CRR. Okay, we are talking about one ratio CRR, then we are talking about SLR. So I just need to give you a simple example. Okay, we are discussing the question, not the whole concept. So CRR is that ratio, that part of total deposits which RBI says that bank has to keep with RBI. Okay, I am a bank. RBI told me that right now CRR is 3%. Consider this one note is CRR. So this is as of now. Okay. Now policy rates are decreased. So what is going to happen? Now I am bound to place more amount with RBI or less amount with RBI. Less amount with RBI. If I am bound to have less amount with RBI, it means I'm having more money with me to be supplied in economy as loan. If more money is there, money supply is there, increase in money supply is there, what is going to happen? It is going to increase the demand, and it is going to increase the demand. It is going to have positive effect on inflation, means it is going to cause inflation, right? More money to lend. Yes. Buyback of government securities by RBI from open market. So you all know that when we talk about government security, it means it is a document. Okay. RBI has given this document to various players in market, those are approved players. Okay. So approved players in market have this government security, and RBI has taken some money from them. Okay. So this is a debt instrument, right? Now, statement is saying buyback. Now, RBI is saying, I want to buy back this government security. When consider this is the government security, although this is my grocery bill, this is the government security for this class. So this government security is in market, and now I am RBI. Promotion हो गया मेरा, ठीक है? कब तक banks बने रहेंगे? So I am buying back this government security. If I am buying back this government security, it means I am going to pay to those people, right? तभी तो I'm saying the word buy back. Buy back means I'm buying. So more money is going into the market. If more money is going into the market, what is going to happen? Money supply is increasing. If money supply is increasing, so it is going to have positive effect on demand. That's why it is going to cause inflation. Means first statement is correct, second statement is correct. Third, an increase in NREGA wages. During lockdown, you all know that there were many articles which were saying that if India wants economy right on the track of growth, we need to increase the rural demand. And NREGA is one crucial instrument to increase the rural demand. So how we are increasing rural demand? We are increasing the wages and NREGA. Okay, if those people are having more money, earlier they were having one note, now they're having two notes against their work, per day work. So it means more money is going in the hand. It means more demand can increase. So this is also going to cause inflation, right? So these three statements are correct. Now comes the fourth, decrease in indirect tax of government. Okay. So when we talk about inflation, inflation has different relation with direct tax and indirect tax. Now the statement is with indirect tax. So you can take example of GST. Okay. And when this question is asked, this is asked about the immediate effect of the decision. Consider we were having this device, and this device was of 100 rupees, and GST was 18%. So now the total bill was 118, because 18% on 100 is 18 rupees, right? Now, statement is a decrease in indirect taxes by government. Means now government has reduced this GST from 18 to 5%. So how much I'm going to pay for this device? Now I'm going to pay 105. So what you got? It means the immediate effect of decrease in indirect taxes of government, indirect taxes by government, so hoga kya? Price is going to reduce. But when we talk about inflation, we talk about average increase in price of goods and services within an economy in a particular time frame, right? So yani ke right answer is 1, 2, and 3. Correct? If you got all the statements, okay, you have understood the question and the concept well, just mention confirm in your comments. I am watching your comments on YouTube. Ajit, got your statement? So that is why we have put this statement in question, because many students are going to be confused with this. They are going to connect demand with this fourth statement. And that's why I said, whenever in economics, this kind of statements are asked, they're talking about immediate effect. Okay. And when we talk about concept of inflation, it talks about average price of goods and services. Price. Right? So when we reduce the indirect taxes, and indirect taxes are levied on goods and services, right? So the first impact is decrease. Ajit, if you got your answer, just mention confirm. Now Ramakrishna has asked, sir, what is going to happen with yes, Jadul, that is why we have used this statement, because people are going to use this concept of demand, right? We talk about the immediate effect. Immediate effect on price would be decrease. Okay, but when it comes to direct taxes, let me clear that out also, even though that is not part of this question. Okay, when we talk about direct taxes, so let's consider an example. So Devesh was having an annual taxable income of 10 lakh rupees, right? Annual taxable income means ऐसी income जिस पर tax लग सकता है. We are talking about income tax. At that point, government said that we are going to take 20% from your net tax, total taxable income. Okay. So it means out of 10 lakh, 2 lakh or 2 lakh amount is going to be paid by Devesh to government as income tax. So what does this Devesh have in his hand? 8 lakh rupees. Yahi disposable income hai, isi ko kharch karna, right? Now, so Devesh has promised his wife that I'm going to give you a jewelry, a diamond ring I'm going to give you on this anniversary. And he has also promised his children that we are going to go to Disneyland. Okay. Hota kya hai? Now a new advisory came. Government said we are changing the taxes. Okay. And now direct tax means income tax. Taking example of income tax. Now we are increasing income tax from 20% to 40% only. Okay. And in this situation, out of 10 lakh, we are talking about 40%. 40% means 4 lakh. Amount 4 lakh is going to be given to government. So now Devesh is going to have 6 lakh in hand, right? So what do you think? Can Devesh fulfill his promises given to wife, given to children easily? No. So Devesh is now in a tough spot, right, Devesh? So ऐसे में होता क्या है? So when we talk about direct taxes, we talk about the amount, disposable income which people have in their hand, and which is directly connected to the demand, average demand in market. Because when we talk about direct tax effect, so it is going to happen with a lot of people, right? तो अगर direct tax increase हुआ, तो net amount which is available in the hand to be spent, वो क्या हो गया? Less हो गया. वो less हो गया, demand decrease हो गई, demand decrease हो गई, तो inflation पर negative impact पड़ेगा. Inflation पर positive impact पड़ेगा. केवल सुनते ही नहीं रहना, क्वेश्चन भी करना. भाई सीधी सी बात. I'm having this much amount. Earlier I was giving 2 notes as tax. Now I'm giving 2 more notes at tax. It means I'm having less amount in my hand. If I'm having less amount in my hand, demand is also less, because we are talking about all people. If demand is also less, it means inflation क्या उतना बढ़ सकता है? नहीं बढ़ सकता, क्योंकि demand is also less, right? And have this thing in mind. When we talk about economy, there are various factors which are working together, right? When you are attempting a question and you are talking about 2 factors, so it is believed that other factors are constant. But when you are going to become bureaucrats, in future, some of you are going to become, say, secretary in finance ministry. So at that time, you're not just going to go by this example. You're going to also get data about other factors which are connected with inflation, which also affect inflation. And your decisions will be based on all the data, all the factors, supply side, demand side, right? Other factors. If you have got the point now, just mention confirm. देवेश तो लाइफ में भूलेगा नहीं. Yes. Now coming to the next question, with reference to treasury bills, consider the following statements. Okay. So when we talk about treasury bill, first you need to know what are treasury bills, why they were made. So when we talk about government security, a paper which is given by government on the behalf of government by RBI, and in lieu of that paper, government क्या करता है? Government कुछ amount लेता है market से, right? So that's a debt instrument. कि उधार लेता है पैसा एक तरीके से, and on that some return is promised. So that government security can be divided into treasury bills and dated government securities, जिनको हम government bond भी कहते हैं, right? So when we talk about treasury bills, so these are short term. It means we talk about less than 1 year, right? So coming to the question, with reference to the treasury bills, consider the following statements. A treasury bill is a short-term asset of the government. So short-term asset word is used. And when the word asset is used with treasury bill, it is a sin. Paap hai. Because treasury bill is a debt instrument. Government issues treasury bill and promise a particular return, right? They are issued through auctions conducted by RBI in its e-Kuber platform, right? So this statement is wrong. Asset की जगह debt होना चाहिए था. Foreign portfolio investment is not allowed in treasury bill. This is also wrong because this is allowed by RBI. Okay, so this is factual. Next, with reference to National Food Security Act 2013, which of the following statement is not correct? So many students, when attempt this particular question and they read first statement, eldest women, 18 years of above or above, to be the head of the household for the purpose of issuing of ration cards. Then they read second statement, at present, state-wise percentage coverage under the PDS is determined by Niti Aayog. And many students have this feel कि यार इन दो statements के बारे में तो हवा ही नहीं है. We don't know about these statements. यानी कि we won't be able to mark correct. But ऐसा नहीं है. Go to the third statement. Go to the fourth statement. Okay. Pregnant women are entitled to receive maternity benefits of not less than 8,000. So what UPSC do? First two statements, UPSC can play some trivial facts. Okay. Some of those details of NFSA, which are not generally available in many current affair magazines. Okay. But it is possible that UPSC in third statement or fourth statement is using some factually wrong type of statement. And the question is not correct. You have to identify which statement is not correct. So when you see that it's saying 8,000, गलत है, 6,000. तो यानी कि आपको not correct बताना था, तो this is not correct, right? So this is how you are going to mark these kind of questions correct, even though you are not confident about first two statements. Okay. With reference to anti-dumping duty, which of the following statement is correct? So I hope you know about the concept of anti-dumping duty. The word itself says duty. It means it is something to do about tax, import tax. Tax levied on some goods which are imported in our economy, right? Anti-dumping means against dumping. And when we say dumping, it means some goods which are available in the exporting country's economy at lesser price than at a lesser price. And what they're doing, what they're trying to do, they're trying to distort our economy. They're trying to distort our market by exporting these goods at lesser price. Let me, give you an example. So in one of the articles, I was reading the reasons and the reasons due to which China became a net exporter economy. So all of you know that China's economy's major part is manufacturing, okay, and of that export plays a vital role. But China ऐसा कर कैसे पाया? तो इसमें कई सारे factors. उसमें से एक factor ये है कि China was giving huge amount of export subsidy to their manufacturers. So what these manufacturers were doing, if some phone, for example, Vivo, if that Vivo is available in Chinese market of say 10,000 rupees, if we are comparing Chinese currency with Indian currency and comparing that amount, how much that amount would be, that is 10,000. So what Vivo would do, Vivo would sell that same mobile in Indian market at say 8,000. Now, many of you will be surprised. ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है? If Vivo is selling that phone at 10,000 rupees in Chinese currency, and how can they sell at cheaper rate? Because import भी तो होगा, transport भी तो होगा, taxes भी होंगे. How that is possible? So what they would do, their Chinese government would provide export subsidy. They would say, if some country, if some of your manufacturing units are exporting beyond this particular limit, then we are going to give you export subsidy. And that export subsidy was such huge, such lucrative, that these factories became the dominant player of international export regime, right? So to safeguard our economy from such practices, WTO provided us this tool of anti-dumping duty. Means we can put additional import tax on these kind of goods. For example, if earlier we were imposing 20% tax, now we said, no, we are going to impose 30%. And you cannot go against us in WTO because this is within the ambit of anti-dumping. Okay, so that's why first statement is correct. Clear? Now, second statement is Directorate General of Foreign Trade is responsible for carrying out investigation. This is wrong. This is factually wrong because office is different. So now the point is, you got the concept. Some questions are asked on particular offices, concepts, applied part. So at this point, I'm signing off. So Shashank Tyagi is signing off and giving the charge to Satyam Chaudhary. Satyam, please continue.
Shashank, I'd like to take from here. I just have to cover a few more questions.
Okay, great.
All right, guys, let's begin. So there were some questions that I was not able to discuss in the first slide. So this is going to be very important because I need to cover this. It might help you a lot. Now, the first question that I'm covering, it is a relatively easier question, and you won't have any problems in solving this. It is regarding the intellectual property rights, whether it be a copyright, patent, or trademark, or geographical indication tag. Now, GI tag we call it. So all these things are current, daily in news. So the question is, you have to match the following. So we already know the patent, according to the Patents Act, of India. In you have to actually study the Patent Act in here, precisely the section 3D. It's very important. In it, you have to also see what is compulsory licensing, what is the evergreening of patents. These are some important things that you need to cover in the Patents Act. Now, the patent is some sort of a grant of a property right to the inventor. Whenever an inventor comes in and he invents or she invents a particular commodity or a particular product, we need to give the property right to that inventor only. So that is the patent. It is an intellectual property right in which we give the property right of the product to the inventor. So that'll be the patents. There are different types of patents for different varieties. Then you have copyright. Whenever we come up with an original song or an original literary work or an original audio work, now all these things you have in place. Say, for example, there is a song that you made, there is a novel that you wrote. All these things, or there is a video that you made. These things have a copyright. Now, the copyright is given to the authors, is given to the producers of the original work. That original work of authorship, we call it, that you have to give the original work, the credit of the original work, to the copyright owner. So that will be the copyright. Then you have trademark. It indicates the source of the good. That means, suppose there is a trademark of a particular company. By just looking at the mark, you would understand what is the source of this particular good. There are just like this. When you just see a tick, now this is the trademark of Nike, and these are the shoes of Nike, then Reebok, then Adidas, then Google, then Microsoft. All these big companies have their particular trademarks. We already know just by seeing this. You already know this is sort of an apple. So I'm very bad at diagrams, but still, the apple, whenever you look at it, you know that this is the trademark of a particular company, and it indicates that what is the source of this particular good. Then you have geographical indication tag. You generally give it to particular products that have a specific location or specific origin. Say, for example, Darjeeling tea. So Darjeeling tea is quite famous and it has a particular GI tag. There is Kashmiri products like so there is a saffron, there is pashmina. That all these things have GI tags related to it. Now we should actually now do the matching. Now herein we have copyright. Copyrights, I already told you, are given to the original works of authorship. They are given to the authors of the work. Then you have patents. They give a property right to the inventor. Then 2 is actually linked to C. Then you have trademark that include the source of the good, and then you have GI tag, and that is related to specific location. So the option that is correct here is 2 only. Fine. Then you have, sorry, 3. This one, option 3. Next question, this is regarding to the external sector, and you need to have some idea about it. What is the currency convertibility? What is the capital account convertibility? What is the current account convertibility? Before going into the capital account and current account convertibility, I just want you to make a chart that will help you a lot in solving such questions. So I'll stop the share. I would just want a whiteboard for that. Just give me a second. So I would want all of you to just make this board, because it is going to help you to solve these questions. For example, in the balance of payment, we know there are 2 accounts. One is the current account, and the other is the capital account. Current account and the capital account. And the current account has 2 portions. One is the visible portion, and the other is the non-visible portion. Visible or the non-visible portion. That is, in the current account, we have the trade of goods, that is in the visible portion of the current account. And in the non-visible account, we have some things like services, the trade of services. When you trade the service, there are some incomes. In the non-visible account, say, for example, there is profits and dividends. There are, say, the interest that you get. That is also a part of the non-visible current account. Then you have, say, for example, there are, transfers. There are transfers. In the transfers, you have like remittances. There are remittances. There are donations. There are donations. There are gifts. Now, all these things, whenever you send these things to outside, or you get these things from outside, that is part of the current account. So the balance of payment has 2 accounts, the current account and the capital account, and the visible portion and non-visible portion are like this in the current account. Now, this particular thing, the trade and services, it gives you the trade account. This is the trade account. Whenever you export goods and services and import goods and services, you might have a trade account surplus. A trade account surplus will mean their exports, that the exports are greater than imports, and you might have a trade account deficit, wherein you might see the exports are less than imports. Now, this is the current account. Now, if you want to do a transaction in the current account, government gives you full convertibility for that. For example, you want to import a commodity from outside. Now you have to, change your currency, that is rupees, into dollars. Now government gives you full convertibility in the current account. You can change any amount of money to, any amount of foreign exchange, and get the money, get the products from outside, import whatever you want to in the current account. Fine. You want to send money as a remittance to outside, you will get the current account convertibility for that. But RBI does not allow the capital account convertibility. And what do we have in the capital account convertibility? The capital account, there are 3 major parts. One is the investments, and the other is the loans. And in this only, there is one more, that is banking capital. That is banking capital. Now, what are the different investments that we have? I'll just come to it. There is FDI, FPI. I'll just come to it, the investment part. But let's cover the loans part first. There are sovereign loans. What are the sovereign loans? Sovereign loans are when the central government of the country just gets the loan from outside, from these multinational institutions, from these big, institutions, big organizations. When your central government gets the loan from outside, that will be a sovereign, loan. Then you have external commercial borrowings. When the private sector gets the loan from outside, that is a external commercial borrowing. Currently, we are in a position, we have a lot of external borrowings, but done by the private sector. But for the first time, the government is also planning to take the money, borrow the money from the external sector. Why? Because in the external sector, you get the money at quite a less rate. Fine. Then you have the banking rate, in which we actually, banking capital, in which we actually see the deposits from outside, and then you have the deposits from outside, then you have deposits deposits to offshore accounts, then that is the banking capital. In this, we have also the NRI deposits, that is deposits from outside only. Now, this is generally your balance of payment, the current account and the capital account. And RBI does provide convertibility in the current account. It does not provide convertibility in the capital account. Why? Because capital account convertibility, if we give a full capital account convertibility, it increases volatility in the market. Why? Because of this investments thing. Because these investments are of various types. There is foreign direct investment, there is foreign portfolio investment, and because of these foreign portfolio investments, which are quite of a volatile type of investments, because of this, it will increase volatility in the market. That is why we do not allow money to be converted in the capital account. Now let's get into this investments part. You need to have some idea to just solve some questions. The investments. Now, what are the various investments that we have in that we invest outside, or the outsiders, that is the foreigners, foreign investors that they want to invest in India? What are the different routes that they can actually have? Now, the first, we have the foreign direct investment, that is the direct investment. Then we have the portfolio investment. Then we have the portfolio investment. Okay. Now, actually, let me cover this. When we have the direct investment, then we have the portfolio investment. In this portfolio investment, we have portfolio schemes and euro issues. Now, we already know what FDI is. When a foreign investor wants to come to India and invests in a company, purchasing the stake more than 10%, that will be considered as an FDI. But in FPI, that is the portfolio investment, we have quite different types. Say, for example, there is FPI, foreign portfolio investment. There is QFI, qualified foreign investment. There is another NRI, investments of non-resident Indians. Now, later on, this FPI and QFI was merged together to form the FII and QFI was merged to form the FPI, foreign portfolio investment, and the recommendation was given by Chandrasekhar Committee gave the recommendation for the merging of FII and QFI. Now, in the euro issues, this is important. What do we have in the euro issues? There are three things in the euro issues. One is the GDR, Global Depository Receipts. There are American Depository Receipts, and then we have FCCB, Foreign Currency Convertible Bonds. Now, these are the things that we have in investments. There is FDI, there is portfolio investment. In portfolio schemes, we have FII and QFI merged into FPI by the recommendation of the Chandrasekhar Committee, and NRI deposits. Then we have euro issues, in which we, for example, when you want to take money from the foreign investors, the company has to get listed in the foreign foreign country. So suppose there is an Indian company, Reliance wants to get money from outside, take money, gather money, generate money from London Stock Exchange. It has to get listed there, and then it can generate money there. Fine. Now, in such a scenario, when the Reliance goes to London Stock Exchange and it wants to get listed there, the London Stock Exchange will issue the euro issues, will issue some depository receipts. When a particular company wants to get listed in different stock exchanges in the world, these different stock exchanges issue global depository receipts. Fine. When an American company that is from United States wants to get listed at London Stock Exchange, then they issue American depository receipts. When a foreign company wants to come and get listed in the Indian Stock Exchange, then Indian stock exchanges will issue Indian depository receipts against that. Fine. So that the Indians could actually invest in the foreign company assets in India only. They don't have to go abroad and invest there. They can invest in the foreign companies in India only. Okay, because of these ideas. So let's see to the questions. What the questions were. So consider the following statements with reference to currency convertibility. Now, in this currency convertibility in India, there is a full current account convertibility. India is currently giving full current account convertibility, perfectly right. At full currency convertibility, exchange rates become more volatile. Full currency convertibility means current account convertibility as well as capital account convertibility. This will give you full currency convertibility. Fine. Now, we don't allow full currency convertibility. Why? Because it is more volatile. It will increase the volatility in the market, and we do not like the volatility in the economy. We would want stability in the economy. That is why at full currency convertibility, there is more volatility because of the capital account convertibility. Fine. Now, both statements are correct. Option 3. Then we have question number 57. Global depository receipts. The question hai very easy question. there are different, different statements. It is simply, मैंने आपको कहा, जब इंडिया की कोई कंपनी है, वो बाहर से अलग अलग मार्केट से पैसा लेना चाहती है, so अलग अलग मार्केट्स में it will get listed, and these markets will actually issue global depository receipts of this foreign company. Fine. Now it is a bank certificate issued in more than one country for shares in a foreign company. For shares in a foreign company, that is, for example, if you want to invest in a global depository receipt, you're actually investing in the shares of that company. Fine, जिसके वो GDRs है. Suppose there is Google wants to get listed in India and to generate money from India. Google India में आके list हो जाएगा, फिर India क्या यहाँ पर GDR वहाँ पे issue होगा इसका, तो हम लोग GDR में invest करेंगे, and indirectly we are investing in the in the shares of the company. That is, it is a bank certificate issued in more than one country for shares in a foreign company. Now global depository receipt की जगह अगर American depository receipt होता ADR, तो ये सिंपली है जब अमेरिकन डिपॉजिटरी रिसिप्ट्स इशू किए जाते हैं बाहर की कंट्रीज में, जैसे यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स की कोई कंपनी है, वो यूरोप में लिस्ट हो गई और यूरोपियन कंट्रीज ने वहां पर अमेरिकन डिपॉजिटरी रिसिप्ट्स इस कंपनी के अगेंस्ट इशू किए. फाइन. नाउ दिस इज इट, ये हो गया आपका. उसके बाद है with reference to currency depreciation, consider the following statement. तो करेंसी अगर डेप्रिशिएट हो रही है, which of the following is correct? You have to see the correct statement. When the country provides fiscal stimulus, the currency tends to depreciate. अब देखिए, fiscal stimulus में क्या होता है? You are directly increasing the money supply, and when you increase the money supply, the quantum of money it increases, that actually decreases the purchasing power of the currency. इसकी वजह से आपकी currency की depreciation होती है, right? Depreciation होती है. So whenever the fiscal stimulus is increased, whenever the money supply is increased, you see clear-cut depreciation in the economy, and this depreciation will only happen if you are actually having a floating exchange rate system. अगर आप depreciation होने देंगे, fine. Now precisely अगर you get into particular words, अगर आप floating exchange rate system में है, then your market, this is a market exchange rate system with an increase in the money supply, you will see there is depreciation in the foreign currency. There is depreciation in the foreign currency. But if you are not actually having a currency, if you're not actually following a floating exchange rate system, if there is a fixed exchange rate system and you are increasing the money supply, depreciation is not going to happen. You might have to devalue the currency. That is the devaluation. Devaluation is done by the central bank of the country, and depreciation is done through the market. It goes through the market forces of demand and supply. Now depreciation आपकी floating exchange rate में होती है, devaluation fixed में होती है जब आपका central bank खुद अपनी currency की devaluation कराता है. Fine. So currency depreciation can only happen in the floating exchange rate system. Perfectly right. If there is devaluation, it might happen in fixed exchange rate system. Fine. So both are correct, both 1 and 2. Then we have with reference to economic recovery, consider the following statements. In India, we are seeing a different trend in here. अभी इंडिया में काफी स्लो डाउन चल रहा था in recessionary model. Now in this particular way, इंडिया के अंदर what we have seen that the companies in here वो जो ग्रो कर रही है, कुछ कंपनीज जो है वो तेजी से ग्रो कर रही है and they are going quite high, and कुछ कंपनीज तेजी से नीचे जा रही है. Fine. So the companies that are high net worth companies, the big companies in India, that they are recovering quite fast. They are recovering quite fast. But the small and medium enterprises, MSMEs, unorganized sector is not able to recover. It is in fact going down. Now this is a K-shaped recovery. You are clearly seeing the K-shaped recovery curve. This is a K-shaped recovery curve that India is actually facing right now. Fine. So what is this? It is a recovery curve in which some of the sectors are increasing. They are recovering quite fast compared to other sectors which are not able to recover that fast. Fine. So K-shaped recovery is K-shaped recovery. In K-shaped recovery, the different sectors of economy recover at starkly different rates. Now we are clearly seeing they are recovering at a different rate. Then we have, to get out of the recessionary period, to get out of the slowdown in the economy, the government generally gives you this regulation that you should actually be able to save more. क्या government आपको recovery के लिए, क्या government आपको इकोनॉमी में रिसेशन से निकालने के लिए सेविंग्स बढ़ाने को बोलेगी? जी नहीं. आपको गवर्नमेंट क्या बोलेगी? कंजम्पशन बढ़ाओ. व्हाई? बिकॉज यू आर इन अ रिसेशन के अंदर डिमांड कम होती है एंड यू वुड वांट टू इंक्रीज द डिमांड. अब डिमांड बढ़ाने के लिए you'll have to increase the consumption. You cannot save more. Fine. So to support the economic recovery process, government tends to nudge people to save more. It is an incorrect statement. Why? Because in the economic recovery, government tends to nudge people to make more consumption, to demand more. And when there is more demand, there will be more production. When there is more production, there will be more gross domestic product, and your national income will increase, which will increase your growth. Fine. So to have growth, to register growth, government generally nudges people to actually consume more, not save more. Fine. In that sense, second statement is incorrect. You have only one is your correct statement. Then you have the last question that we are going to see, I guess. Yes, this is the last question. Which of the following methods are used in contractionary monetary policy? Now, you already know monetary policy आपकी दो types की होती है. It can be a contractionary monetary policy, or it can be an expansionary monetary policy. Expansionary. Contractionary monetary policy simply means the money supply is going to decrease, and here we see money supply is going to increase. Contractionary monetary policy is also known as hawkish money policy, and here we have dovish money policy. Fine. Dovish money policy. It is also known as accommodative monetary policy. Accommodative monetary policy. Fine. Now we have the contractionary monetary policy when you want to decrease the money supply. And how would you decrease the money supply? You can decrease the money supply by increasing the ratios. By increasing the ratios, whether it be CRR, whether it be SLR, you can increase the ratio. That will decrease the money supply. Then you can actually sell the government security. If you sell the government security, well, now RBI has to sell the government security to take the money from the market. Now you're selling the government security and taking the money. Now this will decrease the money supply in the market. Fine. So RBI sells the government security. It does the open market operation and sells the government security to decrease the money supply in the economy. This is the second way. Fine. RBI can also increase the rates of interest. RBI can actually increase the repo rate. RBI can actually increase the MSF. इसकी वजह से rates जब बढ़ेंगी तो banks ज़्यादा loan नहीं ले पाएंगे at a higher rate. Higher rates will actually stop the lending and decrease the money supply. Fine, reduce the lending and decrease the money supply. So with higher rates, higher ratios, and selling the government securities in open market operations, RBI can use these monetary policy tools to decrease the money supply. Now, in this particular scenario, what do you have in your options? If there is a contractionary monetary policy, can RBI increase the cash reserve ratio? Definitely, it will have to increase the cash reserve ratio to decrease the money supply in a contractionary monetary policy. Second is selling of the government securities. Definitely, when you sell the government security, you take the money from the market. That will decrease the money supply. This is also correct. Then decreasing interest rate. No, this is not correct. Why? Because the interest rates, if it decreases, it will increase the money supply. Fine. You have to increase the rates to decrease the money supply. Now, if you want to follow a contractionary monetary policy, you have to decrease the money supply and increase the rates. So here is the option that is incorrect. This will not be the answer. Answer is only 1 and 2. So this was it from me. I hope you like the session. Take care of yourself. I'm giving the floor to Satyam now. Satyam, you might take the floor now.
Thank you, Tahlil. That was a great discussion. People, I don't know, like I really think people must be tired by now. पता नहीं कितनी energy आप लोगों में. So, and there is not much time left, so I will try to go about this quickly, okay? Just give me a moment. I hope the PowerPoint is visible to you all. In case it is not visible, you can drop a message. You can send a message on YouTube, and I will make sure that it's visible. I will zoom in or whatsoever. So you have had like really heavy discussions by now, and now I'm going to start with some of the things which are probably easier, I would say. First is question number 14, which is about PM Kisan. Now this is a question I am not concerned with what this question is asking, because you probably already know the answer of this question, as in you already knew before. That is easy question, right? So I'm going beyond. I'm talking about two schemes. Okay, I'm zooming in a bit if that helps. Wait. Acha, it's visible. ठीक है. हाँ. So I'm going to talk about two schemes related to it. One person says visible, other says not visible. Let me see if I can zoom in more. Is it better now? I hope it's better. So I'm actually going to talk about two different schemes. One is Ritu Bandhu and the other one is Kalia scheme of Odisha. Okay, so primarily I'm going to talk about Kalia scheme actually. So Ritu Bandhu scheme had actually one important flaw, which you should know. So Ritu Bandhu scheme actually gave money on the basis of land size. If you have more land, you will actually get more money because it gave money per hectare per year up to some ceiling. So this is a flawed way because you are giving more money to the richer people, right? Which should not be the ideal way of doing things in a country. So that's one flaw with Ritu Bandhu scheme, which I'm not going to elaborate here. I am actually telling you about Kalia. Now Kalia came after PM Kisan. Ritu Bandhu came before PM Kisan. Okay, Kalia is Odisha's scheme, Krushak assistance for livelihood and income augmentation. Just know that it has 4 components. Because see why I'm telling you, and I will also actually give you information through the discussion later sometimes, that my basic idea is that you should have your prelims and mains preparation combined together. It shouldn't be that prelims and mains are separated. Okay, so that's the reason I'm doing this. So Kalia has 4 components. To cultivators is giving 10,000 rupees per family, just like 6,000 rupees are being given in PM Kisan. To landless households also it is giving 12,500 per year for agriculture related allied sectors, right? Like fisheries, duckery, etc. Okay, now if you are physically challenged and you cannot participate in agriculture, then also you are getting some amount, 10,000 rupees per household is being given. And then there is insurance component of insurance, which is beyond crops, as in beyond. It's basically life insurance and accidental insurance, which is usually not given in general. So this is a very broad scheme and probably a good one. You should know about this scheme because lately we have moved away. We are trying to at least move away from simple subsidies and support prices to the new era of ensuring incomes. So if I'm a farmer, even if I'm not getting probably the right price of my produce in the market, if I'm getting income assistance to make sure that I am getting the right income, my life is fine probably. That's the whole idea. And these schemes are under blue box subsidy of WTO, if you are aware about green, blue and amber box. So MSP, for example, MSP, if you think of MSP is actually amber box, which is problematic. You have to reduce it. But Kalia, PM Kisan, all these fall under blue box. Blue box is allowed. You can have subsidies under blue box. There is no limit. Okay, so this is the difference. So that's one. Now moving on to next question is Swamitwa scheme. Now Swamitwa scheme, again I have picked not because see this is more or less a factual question. Either you know it or you don't know it. But I'm going beyond what was already asked, right? So full form is Survey for Villages Mapping with Improvised Technology. That's I guess that's all right. You understand that. Okay. So now Swamit scheme के साथ क्या है? What is special about it? That in this you are actually surveying. So कैसे करते हैं survey? That also I'll tell you. So what they do is beside every property, the lines dividing every property, they put white chalk. Okay, and then they survey through drones and everything, create GIS maps by appending all the data that was already available. So there is a very clear-cut property demarcation, because land demarcation is relatively easier because there are bunds. वो खेत के बीच में बनाते हैं जैसे पतला पतला. There are defined bunds. In property case that does not happen. Now in urban areas, people are very kind of more attached to property because the worth of land is higher. But in rural areas that is not so. But eventually, as rural area starts transforming into urban areas, this actually leads to conflicts, right? So a clear demarcation, you will actually have clear property rights. So clear property right will enable many things. Now there are many benefits, like you can take loans based on those property rights, right? There can be property tax, which will also help gram panchayats. Third year ka we talk about 3 things, right? Functions, finance, functionaries. Right, ये 3 चीज चाहिए होता है उन्हें. So finances kahan se aayenge? One of the ways is property tax, a very good way to actually enhance their finances, right? So this is also one way. This is also one. Then land record will be improved, which we already know faces a lot of problem. It will be digitized too, right? So based on this, I want to ask you one question. It's already written here, if you can see. Who will own the data related to property? Like property details, data will be created, right? Who will own this data? I'm just telling you for your information. It's already written in the PDF probably that this mapping will be done by, I think it's part of question. No, it's not part of question. Okay. So the union government and state government, because land is a state subject, the state union government will have to go in MOU with state government, because union government cannot directly implement the scheme, right? And then the survey will be done. So who will own the data? Can you answer it? कोई भी बताओ. अरे कोई बताने को तैयार नहीं है. चलो ठीक है. The data on property record will be owned by state. At least state आया, ठीक है. State and revenue department of the state actually, right? Because it's the revenue department of the state which is actually responsible for land related data and everything. Okay. So this is what I wanted to just ask. ठीक है. Survey of India, Government of India, they will have basic information which will be collected for the first time, but updating it will be done by the revenue department only. They will own the data. Okay. So this was this question. Next question is remission of duties and taxes on exported product. Again, solution आप लोग को मिला है. So solutions you would have seen that it is replacing MEIS scheme and everything, right? But I'm going to again talk about something which is beyond this, right? So there is this simple idea. The idea is simple, that you don't want to export taxes, right? What is the meaning of exporting taxes? So say I manufacture this pencil. So in order to manufacture this pencil, I will buy its component parts. But on those component parts also, I will pay tax. So मान लो component parts total cost is 5 rupees. Okay. I add the value of 5 more rupees, it becomes 10 rupees. But those 5 rupees already had taxes, right? Say 2 rupees tax were there. Now when I export it, the price of the pencil will be 10 rupees, but then I will add probably 2 rupees profit. I will export it at 12 rupees. But this 12 also has 2 rupees taxes, which the government took. When this pen goes to say USA will also impose taxes, because they have to write import taxes and then sales tax, some sort of tax. So it's like I'm getting taxed in India and then I'm getting taxed in US, right? I'm getting taxed twice. So the idea is that tax should not be exported. Those 2 rupees should be removed. Earlier it was done through MEIS. So MEIS was meant to remove this, but there was one problem with MEIS. There was no clear methodology to determine how much of tax has to be removed from this. So if it's 2 rupees, how do I determine that 2 rupees? So there were usually some discretionary methods by which it was directly decided that, okay, this much amount should be given under MEIS. This was challenged in WTO by USA, which held that actually MEIS to be export subsidy, which is not allowed under WTO, right? So because export subsidy was not allowed, and this happened, so government of India actually brought in a new system, which is RODTEP, remission of duties and taxes on export products. You should know that exports are already rated 0 in GST, okay, which means 0 GST is applied. Exporters are given. So if I'm again going back to the same example of pencil, if I'm buying component parts, I'm already paying GST on those parts. Uska input credit hota hai, right? There is a input credit created. So I will get that money back later. But when I sell it, actually export it rather, I will not pay any GST on that, and I will also get input credit because wo part I had already paid. But then there are also other taxes like petroleum. Petroleum is not under GST still, right? So I'm also using fuel, so I'm paying tax on that also. How do I get reimbursement for that, right? So for all those things, this RODTEP, and in this they are actually determining properly what percentage or what amount of tax is being paid for 8,000 different items. So it's a humongous exercise that the government has taken up so as to make sure that we are WTO compliant. Okay. Next question is NBFC. This is more or less a revision question because I think it was a part of the open test also. So the question was fairly easy, but I think more or less just for revising, I'm just letting you see this again. There were multiple questions which were deliberately taken from themes which was discussed in the other test, though the questions were not same but were related, right? There's one such question. So यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है, they can neither accept demand deposit nor time deposit, है ना? अब I hope you know कि this is incorrect because you also have NBFCs like LIC. अब LIC में तो deposit जाता है ना? This is time deposit, but जाता तो है ही. And if there are deposits in any NBFC, this SLR will have to apply. Cash is not needed because cash reserve ratio is meant for demand deposit. Because cash reserve ratio का क्या purpose होता है? Bank run नहीं हो जाए. One example, like if I am actually going to ask for my money back, I should actually get it, right? But that's only case with demand deposit. So cash reserve ratio does not apply to them, but SLR will apply to them, right? Because you want stability in NBFCs also. So I think it was fairly easy, just kind of revision. Next question is Securities Appellate Tribunal. This question is again factual, and I think statement 1 was fairly easy. दो बार each was लिखा हुआ है. Statement 2 would have been difficult, but I am actually giving you some additional information. Now, if you want to note down, or rather maybe you can go back to the video later and see this. ठीक है. This particular image, maybe I'll share the link of this image. I have taken it from newspaper only. In 2017, some changes were made. Some tribunals were replaced with other tribunals. They were merged, reorganized. Everything was done, right? So because of this, you should actually know what are the new tribunals. Like you cannot guess. You cannot guess in the exam that Information Technology Act, the tribunal that handles is Airport Appellate Tribunal. You cannot guess this. You will get it wrong. Again, control of national highways, how will you relate it to Airport Appellate Tribunal, right? So for this reason, I have given you this information. These changes were made in 2017 budget, and you should just note these down. Like these are like the exceptions. They will not fit to your rule. So the chances of committing mistakes will be higher, right? Next question is tax buoyancy and tax elasticity. This I have actually taken for a very different reason, which is I want you to give you one small way of easily recalling these. So the way is tax elasticity. Ko remember this as tax to income elasticity. Okay. So tax to income elasticity is also similar. Tax to income elasticity will apply probably on individual, but tax elasticity is for the whole nation. So the idea is simple, that if the GDP increases, how much will tax increase, right? If the tax is also increasing as fast as GDP, the elasticity will be 1. It can increase faster than GDP. It can increase slower than GDP, right? So that's tax elasticity. Tax buoyancy is also same thing, but there is a very typical difference. Now say we have certain slabs, right? So if you are earning till 5 lakh rupees, you pay no tax. But if you are earning 5 lakh to 10 lakh rupees, you pay 20% tax on the incremental amount. If it is 10 lakh plus, you pay 30% tax. So instead of doing anything, what if the government removes this slab and makes it 2 lakh rupees. 2 lakh, up to 2 lakh, no tax. But 2 to 5 lakh rupees, you have to pay 10% tax. Suddenly, there will be more tax without any change in GDP, right? So that will increase tax buoyancy, but that will not increase tax elasticity. Okay, because the income has not changed. It is tax to income elasticity. Income has not changed. People's income are same, so tax elasticity will not change, but tax buoyancy will change. Tax became more buoyant, right? So this is the particular difference between the two. Both are important parameters. In order to understand the responsiveness of the tax, it's important to actually see both of them. Okay. Next question is interest rate growth differential. Again, I have taken this question for something more than just what is asked in the question. So the question is whether you should borrow or not. Okay, that's the whole idea, to borrow or not to borrow, right? So in general, we always see that everywhere in newspaper and everywhere it's written that borrowing is bad. Like they denounce whenever government borrows. But understand this, say I'm a businessman. I need 1 lakh rupees to improve my business. And I have taken it at an interest rate of 5% from somewhere, from a friend or somebody. Now I'm making a profit of 10% per annum because of this. So I can return back this 5% and still have 5% more savings with me, like extra benefit with me. So it makes sense for me to borrow this 1 lakh. If I don't borrow this, I'm actually losing out 5%, which will become my opportunity cost. Right? So this does not make sense. I should actually borrow it. At the same time, there is one more thing that I need to keep in mind, which is how much loan I already have. Say I already have 20 lakh rupees loan on me, right? So iska, I am already paying some amount, say 1 lakh rupees on this. Can ispe jo additional burden aayega because of this, can I add that into this and then repay? I need to see that too, right? Because if it's not according to, because see 1 lakh, it won't happen as if I will invest 1 lakh and it will start giving me return. It will take time to give me return, right? And when it comes to situation like the whole country, it's not even necessary that everything will convert into as much growth, right? So what we actually need to say it, I told you, यहाँ पे क्या था, earning and interest rate. We need to compare to decide कि कितना, मतलब whether we should borrow or not, right? So how fast are we earning? For the government, there are two important things. Nominal GDP growth will say how fast the economy is growing, and tax buoyancy will say how much tax government is able to collect, right? Not tax elasticity. Here, buoyancy is the better parameter. And the other part is the rate of interest. How much interest are we paying on what we are borrowing, right? But again, the total corpus must also be seen. So you cannot simply keep increasing the loan. For that, you have to keep primary deficit in mind. Primary deficit should be kept low. What is primary deficit? I hope you know primary deficit is fiscal deficit minus पुराने वाले interest paid on loans जो पहले से था, old obligation. Why are we removing this? Because we are saying that if I remove this part, like say I have a loan of I have to repay 30,000 rupees to somebody, right? I need further amount of loan of 50,000 rupees for this year's expenses, but 30,000 is going here. So for actually this year, I actually need only this 20,000 rupees, remaining 20,000. This is the primary deficit, right? So it actually indicates the current year's deficit. So primary deficit, as long as it is controlled and you are actually earning more than the interest rate, you are actually going fine. That's all right. So that was cross elasticity of demand. Again, this is another question जो last time से pick करा हुआ है. So very simple, I guess. हो गया होगा सबसे. बस एक बात समझाने के लिए, simple for people who do not know. So this is a golf bat. I'm bad at drawing, and this is a golf ball. Okay. So if bat prices go up, what will happen to the prices of ball? So if bat prices go up, the demand of bat will decline. If demand of bat will decline, demand of ball will also decline. If demand of ball declines, the price of ball will actually go down, right? So this dependence on price is called cross elasticity, right? So cross elasticity, this is a complementary or supplementary good, right? Then there, so in case of complementary good, what you're saying that when the price is actually increasing, here the price is declining, so it's negative, right? So here complement should have actually negative. But ulta kya hoga in case of oranges and quinoa? These are substitute. गरीब लोग का orange है quinoa, right? So if the price of oranges goes up, quinoa का demand बढ़ जाएगा, so the price of quinoa will also go up. So here substitute goods में क्या होगा? Positive होगा, जो कि statement 1 में है. So I hope this concept is clear. और अगर unrelated है, unrelated, it will not impact. It will not have any impact. So in that case, actually the cross elasticity is 0. Right? So I hope it was simple. Next question is the generalized system of preferences. Again, this question has been taken more as a myth buster, right? So there are two things. One is, in many places you will find newspapers and others writing that GSP has been implemented by USA. It's not so. It has been implemented by 13 countries. You can check that on UNCTAD website. It has been implemented by 13 countries and not only USA. That's one. Number two, it's under UNCTAD, not WTO. WTO, so it was actually started, the negotiation about started in 1960 only. Okay, at that time there was GATT, and GATT did not have any system of this preferential treatment. After UNCTAD came up with this, in GATT, an exception was made, exception was provided that GSP can be implemented by countries. So these are the two things that I wanted to actually let you know through this question. So I hope you have understood that. Again, coming to next question, which is, okay, Shashwat, primary deficit should be low. Why should it be high? If I'm borrowing for this year's expenses, why should even that be high? See, ideally, again, I will tell you something. There is no actual formula to decide in economy whether something should be high or low, right? So, for example, see savings rate. When you get your salary, you either save or you consume, right? You do two things. If you save, this money goes to banks and bank lend it to business. Business produce stuff that you end up consuming. Now, if there is too much saving and no consumption, तो demand कहाँ से आएगा? If there is too much consumption and no savings, तो capital कहाँ से आएगा business के लिए? So it's always about a fine balance between the two. कहाँ पे, where to get that fine balance? So even in case of primary deficit, while we say that it should be low, it's not necessary. It's not compulsory कि बिल्कुल low ही रखना है. What if it's needed, right? So you have to look things with some perspective. Generally, it is considered that it should be low, as in you should be able to meet your expenses with your own resources, right? But as we discussed in the previous question, borrowing is not bad. It's not necessarily bad. There is no such formula, right? Okay, so that's for the previous doubt. Now fertilizer, again fertilizer, I think the point that I wanted to actually highlight was price control versus subsidy. Okay, this is something that I actually wanted to make you understand. So price control is about defining the price of a product. This you can only do through subsidy, but you can define. Actually, you can define otherwise also. So, there have been farmers' demands recently that MSP should be backed by law, right? So, what if government comes tomorrow and says that now rice will be sold at minimum rupees 55, right? So, you can do both. You can fix a floor of the price. You can fix a ceiling of the price, right? So, that's price control. So in case of urea, government actually defines the price. So if urea packet is prices say rupees 30, let's say that, and if I'm a manufacturer, I'm manufacturing it at rupees 100, I will get 70 rupees subsidy from the government, but it will be sold at 30. There is another manufacturer who is more efficient than me, making it in just 80 rupees, he will get 50 rupees subsidy. So this is one of the biggest problems in urea sector, that inefficiency is incentivized because I got 70 rupees despite being inefficient, right? Which is not the logical thing to do. This is one of the problems of price control. Normal subsidy, what will happen is that the government will say, okay, I will give you 50 rupees subsidy. Price of the product will be determined by market forces. Market forces are demand and supply, right? So this will actually lead to competition. Competition between me and the other producer. I will also try to become efficient to sell the product as cheap as possible. So that's actually the case with other. So there are three fertilizer, important major fertilizers. You must be aware of this. NPK, right? So urea is and nitrogen. So other than this potash and phosphorus, we have normal subsidy based regime. There is no. But the problem is price controls are of course political. एक बार हो गया तो जाएगा बहुत मुश्किल है, right? So that's the case with urea. The government is trying, but it's difficult. Next question is natural rate of unemployment. Again, basic fact PDF पता होगा आपको, right? I'm going a little beyond that. Okay. So सबसे पहले तो ये समझ लो कि full unemployment is inefficient in the sense that it can actually not be attained. So imagine कि India is going leaps and bounds, right? So if it is growing leaps and bounds, I will not want to stay in my own job forever. I will also want to grow. I can see sectors growing. I can see new opportunities being created, right? I can see everything happening. So if that is happening, I will want to switch to some new sector or do something else, right? Or maybe move to a different company. So this will create frictional unemployment in which I'm leaving my present job and going to the different job. The gap between that will actually create frictional unemployment, right? So that's one. Then there will be structural. So the economy structure will change, right? A country which is continuously growing will actually have less and less of agriculture, more and more of service industry. In that case, people who were in agriculture will eventually, be unemployed, and people in service sector will grow. But then you have to get skilled to move to service sector. You can't just move from agriculture to service sector, right? So in that case, what will actually happen? There will be some structural unemployment created. So even if the economy is doing good, right? Actually there will not be full employment. There will always be unemployment. This is called the natural rate of unemployment. But the problem is that there is no way to determine as to how we can know whether what is the right rate of unemployment which should be considered as natural. That's one problem with this. Some generally put the number at around, sorry, not 4%, sorry, big mistake, 2 to 3%. Some say it should be 2, some say it should be 3. There is no exact parameter to determine how much unemployment should be there in the economy. So I'm coming to next question, demand pull inflation. These three are very easy options. I think the confusion was with depreciation of rupee, and there is something important that I want to convey through this question, which is in economy, we already discussed about consumption and savings, right? How both are related. Everything is circular in economy. So if you start thinking backward, you are probably going to end up with some wrong answer in prelims, particularly, right? In MCQs. So that is why I have taken up this question. So the moment you think of depreciation of rupee, you start thinking, okay, why has the rupee depreciated? There are multiple reasons, but then inflation is one of the reasons, right? Right. So inflation itself is a reason for depreciation of rupee. है ना? So if rupee has depreciated because of inflation, you will end up saying कि ठीक है फिर तो it can be a cause for demand pull inflation, which is like going backwards. Never think in economy backwards. Always think forward. Depreciation has already happened for whatever reason. I don't know. That's not written. I will not think about it. Why depreciation has taken place? It has taken place. Now what? That is the question. So what does depreciation? पहले तो depreciation. The moment we say depreciation, what do we talk about in depreciation? हमेशा always go by fundamentals. So what do we talk about depreciation? Depreciation होता है किस बारे में? It's about rupee compared to other currencies. सबसे simple dollar ले लो, dollar. So dollar का भाव बढ़ गया, rupee का कम हो गया. यही तो है ना depreciation. So for $1, I was getting 100 rupees. Now for $1, I'm getting 120 rupees. Right? So depreciate हो गया, है ना? So how will it impact the imports that are coming in? The import, मान लो वो अब अगर $1 का था, the import that was worth $1 will now be worth 120 rupees. It will become costlier for me, right? but the export will become cheaper because I'm exporting. The exporter is exporting in rupees, right? So I'm still exporting in 100 rupees, some product in 100 rupees, which now instead of becoming $1 became $0.8 for the person buying it, right? So more of the things will be exported. Export will increase. So what will happen to supply of the good, right? And what will happen to demand? Now demand will be there. It will start impacting. How will it impact demand and supply? So what will happen that export will increase, but imports will become costly, and while demand remains for particular good, the supply will decline. But it is not because of, understand two things here. One, it's not because of any supply bottleneck. So it's not supply push inflation, right? That's one. Number two, when depreciation, rupee is depreciating, rupee depreciates, you will have more rupee compared to dollars in the economy, right? इसलिए तो इसका भाव बढ़ा हुआ है. If you have more rupee in the economy, this will actually create more demand, right? Both will couple together and lead to actually demand pull inflation, right? So depreciation will end up with higher this. I think this was the only option which was tricky. Other options are quite all right. So moving to next question, which is quite simple, I guess, taxpayer charter. See, this question again I took because of, I would say, mains. Okay, question आप लोग के syllabus में, I hope you are aware, citizens charter is part of your syllabus in paper 2. Just understand what charter is. Charter is not a legal commitment. It is not backed by any law. It's different from right to service. It's not right to service. You cannot go and say that, okay, I should be getting this service, or this much fine should be paid, or this action should be taken. It's not right to service. It's not right to grievance redressal. It's not any of them. It's just a commitment by some organization. It can be any organization. It can be private organization also. It's just a commitment by some organization that they will do certain things for you. In return, they also expect you to perform certain duties, because without that, performing their task will become very difficult, right? So that's what a charter is. So if you know just this information, this question is solvable, except first statement, which is factual. You have to know that it was in 2020 budget. These two statements actually become quite easy to know. So that was the purpose behind this question. This is the last question of the whole discussion. Nobody's coming after me. So this is also for giving you some extra information actually. First, know that estimating income is very difficult. Like if I go to an agricultural household which is selling some milk and then selling some rice and then some vegetables in between, I don't think I'm going to get any estimation of how much they are earning, right? But it's easier to actually get estimation of how much they're spending. Okay. So I can ask them, how much did you spend on your clothes in the last 30 days, on slippers in last 30 days, on food in last 30 days? Rough idea they can give for everything, right? But there is a problem here, and I think you must have already seen this. The problem is, I will not buy clothes frequently. Slippers में तो बहुत ही time लग जाता है, unless the previous one is broken, right? While food is more frequent. And in food also, there are like two types of varieties. Some are perishables. Vegetables ज़्यादा जल्दी खरीदेंगे, almost every alternate day or third day, right? And then there is rice, which is non-perishable. तो ये इसमें ज़्यादा time लगेगा. So how do we do this? How do we prove? So earlier there was what we call uniform recall period. Okay, uniform recall period, uniform reference period, which was this. सबका same पूछो. But mixed reference period is about 30 days पूछो food का. It makes more sense. 365 days like clothes and other stuff, right? So it becomes easier. And then there is also something called modified MR, mixed recall या reference period. Modified में क्या 730 and 365. So 7 days for perishable, 30 days for like rice and atta and dal, ठीक है? And then 365 for other stuff like clothes and other things. Right? So this is what has been done. Apart from that, this information is written here. So know that Tendulkar committee recommended moving from URP to MRP, and Rangarajan committee later recommended MRP to modified MRP. Okay. Apart from that, this is the last slide. This I have given just so that you know a few more things about poverty estimation, right? So first thing is head count ratio. Okay. So head count ratio is about width of poverty, as in how many people are, what is the percent of people who is poor, right? So I determine a poverty line. Okay. Poverty line से मान लो 1000 रुपया per month है, ठीक है? Now number of people below poverty line BPL divided by total population. It will give me the ratio of people जो भी है 21% दे दिया कितना people, but it's not telling me how poor they are. 1000 रुपया था, किसी के पास 100 ही है, somebody has 900. What is the depth of poverty? That is not told by this. उसके लिए we use poverty gap. What does poverty gap do? Poverty gap actually does this: poverty line minus income of one person plus poverty line minus income of second person plus dot 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 plus poverty line minus income of nth person. Every person who is poor, सबका income ऐसे. So this is giving me the gap of individual people from poverty line, right? How much depth? This is divided by, which is like getting the average of all this. This is called poverty gap. Okay, so this tells about depth of poverty. So width and depth can be known for this. Since P index. Now this, see, it's complicated index. It is taking into account poverty line, head count ratio, poverty gap, Gini coefficient, everything, right? So you need not know exact formula of sense P index, but know that this accounts for everything, right? Depth of poverty and inequality, everything is visible in sense P index. Know this. Quintile income ratio is nothing but income के basis पे I have divided the population. This is the highest earning 20%. This is the lowest earning 20%. So I will take the ratio of these two and 1/5, highest 1/5 and lowest 1/5, and I will get the ratio. This actually tells about inequality, which is relative poverty. आपको पता होगा absolute and relative poverty का concept, right? So as we start growing, we start looking at relative poverty also, not just absolute poverty, right? And the last one is extreme poverty method, which World Bank uses. Like World Bank is an example. It's not as if only World Bank uses. Anybody can use it, but then it's World Bank user it is most prominently throughout the world, which is the poverty line based on national poverty lines of 15 poorest economies of the world, like, okay, which is currently $1.90 at PPP levels, right? So this is SDG target is also actually related to this only. So that was it. I hope the discussion helped you all, and that's it. Thank you very much. Have a good day.